So, welcome again for this lesson or the next episode about in science. Today we are going to look at the topic animals. This topic runs all through from standard 1 to standard 8, and today we are going to look at what we call standard 6 work. Standard 6 work. The standard 6 work about animals, we learn about three things. Standard 6 work, we learn about 3 things. 1, you look at animal feeds. 2, you look at the grazing methods of animals. Then 3, you look at the balanced diet of the animals. So for today, we are going to start with what you call animal feeds. And when you check this topic from standard 6 work, that is primary science, it runs all through from page 32 up to 38. It's a very short topic that we are going to cover today. So animal feeds here, animals just like human beings, they also need to eat so that they can have energy either for growth, for high production, and also to protect themselves from diseases. So animal feeds here, they are classified as they are grouped. They are grouped into you have what you call pasture. We have what you call pasture, and then number B, we have what you call fodder feeds. Fodder feeds. And then number C, we have what we call conserved feeds. Conserved feeds. Conserved feeds. Then number D, we have what we call as concentrates. 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 Concentrates are also known as commercial feeds. Also called commercial feeds. Commercial feeds. So, those are the types of animal feeds. As I've said, they are grouped into pasture. We have fodder feeds or fodder crops if you want. You can call it fodder feeds or fodder crops. We also have what we call conserved feeds. Then we have last what we call concentrates, which are also known as commercial feeds. So, straight away, we start on this. But before we start on this, let me enlighten you. These questions do come in exam KCP. Like if you check from the old runaway from 2009 up to 2019, we have had around 9 questions all through. At least they bring 1 question or 2 questions. Like if you check that of 2009 KCP question 13, they'll ask you a question about lucerne. The question was, the type of nutrients found in the lucerne is which type? And the answer was which one? Proteins. And many other questions. Let's start from pasture. Pasture. Pasture is an animal feed that is made or is the piece of land set aside. Pasture, if you can explain what is it, pasture is a piece of land set aside with the grass or legumes or both for animals to feed on, or both for animals to feed on. That's what you call pasture. Then this one here, example, because I've talked about grass, I've talked about legumes, I've talked about both. For the grass here, let us start with what you call examples of grasses. Examples of grasses. Examples of grasses. We have what we call Nandi-Ceteria. Nandi-Ceteria. You also have what we call the Kikuyu grass. Kikuyu grass. We have Guatemala grass. Guatemala grass. We also have what we call star grass. And many others that you can name. Those are examples of the grasses found under pasture, but you have more. Then when you come to example of legumes, animal leguminous feeds, which are under pasture, animal leguminous feeds. Leguminous feeds. We have what you call as Lucerne, which was asked in KCP 2009. Question 13. We also have what you call clover. We also have what you call as desmodium. And then lastly, we have what you call glycine. Glycine. So those are examples of animal leguminous feeds. And these ones here, you find that some of them may be under pasture and some will fall under what you call conserved feeds. Note, if the piece of land or pasture is purely made of grass or purely made up of legumes, is known as a single stand. So, if the pasture is purely made up of either grasses or legumes only, is called single stand. Is called single stand feeds. Single stand feeds. However, if the pasture is comprised of a mixture of pasture and legumes, is called mixed stand. However, if the pasture is made up of both, grasses and legumes. Grasses and legumes. Then it will be called mixed stand. Then it will be called mixed stand. Mixed stand. So those we find about pasture. Let's come to what we call fodder. Fodder crops or fodder feeds for the animals. These ones are the type of feed that you harvest the plants from the farm and then you take the animals for feeding on. So let's look at it in detail. We have this was number A, then you come to number B. That's what you call as fodder feeds, or also you can call it fodder crops. So as I've said, fodder feeds, these are animal feeds, harvested from the farm, and given to animals. These are animal feeds harvested from the farm and given to animals. Given to animals either in zero grazing or rotational. Then examples of fodder. Examples of fodder feeds. Fodder feeds. We have what we call as the first one will be Napier grass is the best. Napier grass is the best among these fodder feeds. Number 2, we have what we call as Lucerne. We have Lucerne. You also have what we call as glycine. We have glycine. This part is Y. Glycine. We also have what we call as clover. We have potato vines. Potato vines. We also have what we call as maize stalks. Maize stalks. We also have Guatemala grass, Nandseteria, and many others that you can name. They fall under this group of fodder feeds. The key word is the fodder feeds here, animals do not feed on them direct in the farm. However, as a farmer, you can't harvest, cut them, then you give to the animals either in the stalls, that's in zero grazing, or when they may be under pattocking method or under strip method. So that's what we call fodder feeds. Let's go to number C, which we call as number C, because we have talked about pasture, we have talked about fodder feeds. So let us come to what we call conserved feeds. And remember, conserved feeds, many times they have brought that question in exam, KCP, because it's very, very important part of it. That's number C. We come to what we call as conserved feeds. Conserved feeds. Which are the conserved feeds? Conserved feeds are the type of animal feeds you harvest from the farm, then you keep for future use. You harvest from the farm, then you keep so that animal will use it during the dry spell. That's what you call conserved feeds. And how many are they? 2. So first of all, these are animal feeds harvested from the farm, prepared and kept. Prepared and kept for future use, maybe during the dry spell. So examples of these ones, there are how many? Only 2. We have what we call as the hay. One of them is called hay. And then number 2, we have what we call silage. So there are only 2, that is hay and silage. Very quickly, hay, it is prepared and kept when dry. Hay is prepared and kept dry, is prepared and kept dry in pairs. So that's what you call hay. Then number 2, we have what you call as silage. Many times they like bring a question on silage. On silage. So a question on silage. Silage here, you find that it is prepared and kept in wet form of state. So silage is prepared and kept in wet state, whereby when they keep it, it has some water in it, it has some moisture. So this silage here it is kept in silos. Is kept in silos. Is kept in silos. However, some people who don't have such structures, how do they keep them? They dig a hole in the ground, they lay down a pulp paper, maybe just to demonstrate. They may dig a hole like this in the ground, then they lay here a pulp paper, then they drop here the cut materials. For example, maize stalks, potato vines, or Napier grass. After they have kept here all those things, they take this paper, they cover like this. After covering here, because the other things will be like this, they put here the soil. So this one also can be used to keep or to store silage. The food which is kept here, you'll find that it remains in wet state or moisture state. Then you'll find that again, when you are keeping this silage, you need to compress it. Why should we compress silage in the silos? This is not a silo, but it's just a modified one by digging a hole in the soil. You place a pulp paper, you put the plant materials inside, then you cover. So why should we compress? We compress silage in the silo so that we can remove air. We compress silage in the silo to remove air. Another question may be, why should we remove air from the silage? We remove air from the silage so that we can do what? We can avoid it from fermenting, rotting. So, we can say this, that silage is compressed when kept in silos to remove air. Next one, why should we remove air from the silage? As I've said, we remove air from the silage to prevent rotting. So that's about silage. Remember, we have discussed about what we call A, it was pasture, B, it was fodder feeds, C, it is conserved feeds, and conserved feeds we have seen that there are two, that is hay, silage. Let's go to number D, which is known as animal feeds we call as concentrates. Concentrates are animal feeds we buy from the shop. They are bought from the shop, which means they are prepared in the factories and then they are sold. So we come to number D, which we call as animal commercial feeds. Animal commercial feeds. So you find that one, they are also called concentrates. Also called concentrates. Two, you find that this type of animal feeds that are bought from the shop are manufactured in factories and sold in shops. That's what you call animal commercial feeds. Examples. Which are the examples of animal concentrates or commercial feeds? There are many. We have what we call as dairy meal. Two, we have chick mash. And then three, we also have what we call as layers mash. Number four, we have what we call as picklet pellets. We may also have what we call growers mash. And then next one, we may also have what we call as calf pencil. So it includes those and many others you may name. However, remember, animal commercial feeds, also known as concentrates here, most of it is containing protein nutrients. Most of it contain protein nutrients, except just a few which may contain mineral salts. For example, dairy meal, chick mash, piglet pellets, crow's mash, and calf pencil, they contain proteins. But layer's mash contain mineral salts. Why? Because this one is given to chicken that lay eggs so that their eggshell may be strong. We go to number 2, which we call as animal rotational grazing. Animal rotational grazing. Course number Roman 1, we were talking about animal feeds. So you come to what you call as, this is Roman 1. So you come to Roman 2, which we call as animal rotational grazing. Animal rotational grazing. Rotational grazing. This part here has been brought in exam many times. When you check in your KCP booklets, the year 2009, question 14, we had a question about rotational grazing. They asked a question that, which of the following grazing methods is a rotational grazing? That's 2009, number 14. Same question was brought in 2016, number 20, about rotational grazing. It was again repeated in KCP 2013. Let's look at this. When you talk of animal grazing, sorry, I messed a bit. Animal grazing methods, sorry. Animal grazing methods. I wrote a wrong thing. Animal grazing methods. Animal grazing methods. So, this one, see, you find that animal grazing methods here, there are how many? 3 in groups. There are mainly 3. 1, we have, so there are 3 types of animal grazing methods. Animal grazing methods. These are, we have what we call the herding method. Herding method. And then number 2, we have what we call stall feeding. Stall feeding, which we also call as zero grazing. Zero grazing method. And then number 3, we have what we call rotational grazing. Rotational grazing. So rotational grazing here, again, you'll find that it further divides into 3 groups. The way of telling that it comes in KCP, like that of 2009, question 14, and 2016, number 20. Let's start on what you call herding method. Herding method here. Herding method. When you start on herding method, herding method, this method here is the one which is commonly used by many farmers, and in particular those farmers who are the pastoralists. When I talk of pastoralists, I hope you understand. We have people like the Maasais, Samburu, and if you go to South Africa, you have the Tswana. If you go to West Africa, you have the Fulani. When they move about with the animals as they graze, that method they use is what you call herding method. Like if you check in KCP book, that's question, which year was that? That's 2013, which was asking about which of the following grazing method requires a large piece of land. The answer will be herding. That was the answer for that year, 2013. So what is herding? You can say herding is a method of animal grazing that involve animals to move about. As they graze on their own. They can move kilometers and kilometers as they graze. Advantage is that they feed on the type of grasses or vegetation they want. So that's the most advantage for them. However, the most disadvantage of this method is that it requires a very big piece of land. 2, you cannot practice this method where you have many people. So it needs a place where there's a sparse group of people or settlement. So it involves animals, movement as they graze. So the way I've just said, that advantage is animal is able to feed on the type of grass or vegetation it requires or it wishes, but the disadvantage is that it requires a very big piece of land. Let's come to number B, which we call as stall feeding. Stall feeding. Stall feeding method here. This one is practiced by people majorly who keep animals for milk. So these are, for example, the dairy farmers. This is the method used by farmers who keep or rear animals in built or constructed structures. Animals in constructed structures called stalls. So that's why the same method we can also call it as zero grazing, also known as zero grazing, Zero grazing. The animals are kept in the house, which is the main advantage of zero grazing or stall feeding. The main advantage of zero grazing is this method ensures high production to the farmer. The farm is going to get a lot of milk or produce from the animals kept in such a situation. 2, another advantage that it is good to be used where there are many people. It can be practiced in densely populated areas. Why do we say so? It requires a small piece of land. However, the main disadvantage of stall feeding is it's very expensive to start. Because 1, you have to build the house. 2, you must have money to provide feeds. Animals will not be moving around, but you give the animal food, and that food must be bought. So that's the most disadvantage of stall feeding. Another disadvantage is that it requires skills. You cannot start stall feeding without any skill. At least you have some knowledge about this method. And then this one again is very tiresome. That's another disadvantage of stall feeding. Because as you are practicing, you are going to do a lot of work. So it's very tedious or tiresome. Let's come to number C, the method we call as rotational grazing methods. Rotational grazing methods. So rotational, that's number C. Rotational grazing methods. Many times this is where the question comes in exam. Rotational grazing methods here, they are grouped into 3. This method involve animals moving about as they feed, but in a controlled manner. This method involves animals moving about as they feed in a controlled state, in a controlled process. What do we mean by this? They are free to move, yes, but there is a certain limit they need to move about. Not like in the herding where they can move to anywhere they want. This method, they move, yes, but in a very controlled state or process. They are grouped into two. It is grouped into three, not two, into three. One, we have what we call buttocking methods. Buttocking. And then number two, we also have what we call tethering method. Tethering method. And then number three, we have what we call the strip grazing. Strip grazing. That is now KCP 2009 question 14 was this one. Strip grazing. So these ones here, they also have ways how they are done and how they differ. So let's look at what we call buttocking in a very short way. Buttocking here. So when you start with the buttocking method, one, you find that this method is carried out in a fenced farm with the subdivided sections. Is a method practiced by the farmer in a permanently fenced and subdivided units. Permanently fenced and subdivided units called buttocks. Now, this method here, you find that when the animals are feeding, they share those units share the water traps and feeding traps. So the units share, majorly they share water traps. Maybe I can draw for that. If you have a very big piece of land like this one here, then this land is subdivided as follows. You find that they may subdivide like this, and then they put in this manner. So that one is an example. The all fences which are seen here, they are permanent. Then in between here, we are going to have what we call the water traps. These are what we call water traps. And then you will have here small gates to allow in animals or to allow out animals. Small gates like this, small gates like this, small gates like that. So when animals are maybe feeding in this unit A, they may move to unit B. When the grasses are over in unit B, they'll be moving to unit C. So they continue moving in that manner as they come down like this, go like this, come this side, go there, and go there. So this one is what we call rotational grazing, whereby they move in small units. We call the buttocks, the way I've said here. This is now the D, E, F, G, and H. So as they move on like that, behind there, where they're coming from, the grass will be given time to grow. So that's why he says that the most another advantage of this method that the grasses or animal feeds are allowed to grow, so becoming more palatable. We come to number 2, which we call as tethering method. Tethering method here is a method that involves animals which are tied on the rope. The animals are tied on the rope, so that is tethering method. Tethering method is where an animal is tied with the rope, and then the rope is tied right on the post or is tied on the peg. Is a method where an animal is tied with the rope, which is tied on a peg or post. So you find that this method here, the animal will be feeding in a circular area, which is also called circumference. So an animal feeds in a circular area, then you find that this method is also has some advantage. Advantage of tethering is that one is better or is best to the farmer with the few animals, maybe one or two animals. This method is the best. But the disadvantage is that this method can cause what you call entangling of animals, because sometimes the animal can be moving about, then the rope can tie the neck and the animal can die. That's what we call as disadvantages of tethering method, because the animal may be somewhere here, they tie here the rope, then the animal will be feeding in a circular manner like that. So when the animal is moving, when being tied like this, going around in this manner, that's what we call rotational grazing, the method we call as tethering. This will be the peg here, and then this will be the animal feeding in a circular. Let's come to the last part, which we call as the strip grazing. Strip grazing is a method where animals are kept in fence structure, but the structure is not having all of it permanent, but some parts are temporary. So we have what we call as strip grazing. Strip grazing method. Strip grazing method here is where animals are kept in a fenced structure with the temporary fences. So this method here also, you find sometimes they may say it's a method that is using a temporary fence, a movable fence, or an electric fence. So it is a method. It's a method where the subdividing fence, is either a temporary or a movable or an electric fence. That's what we call as strip grazing methods. What is this? Maybe to show in a demonstration of a diagram, you'll find that a farm is like this for the farmer. Then you find that they say this part here, they subdivide like this. So the inner subdivided fence here or subdividing fence here is either a temporary one, movable one, or an electric fence, which can be removed, then move to the next part. So that's what we call as a temporary or movable fence. This one is temporary fence. Also we can call it electric fence, whereby if the animals are feeding here, when the grass is over, they'll move this wire or that fence, the next part, they come here. When the grass is over, again, they'll be allowed to move here, and they move that fence. So that manner is what we call as strip grazing methods. As I stated earlier, I said that under Standard 6 topic animals, we are going to learn about 3 things. I said 1, we learn about animal feeds, which we have talked about. 2, we learn about animal grazing methods. Now we are going to number 3, which we call as animal balanced diet. Because as I said, just like human beings, animals also need to feed on food that is having all nutrients. What am I saying? We are going to go to number 3. And number 3 is what we call constituents of animal feeds. Constituents of animal feeds. Animal feeds. Constituents of animal feeds. Whereby, just like human beings, animals also need to feed on type of food that is having all types of nutrients. So, just like human beings, animals also need to feed on food rich in all nutrients. So, these animal feeds we have just like that of human beings. So, examples of animal feed, examples of animal balanced diet feeds. Animal balanced diet feeds are, we have what we call, animals must feed on what we call proteins. 2, animal must eat food which is rich in carbohydrates. Animals also need to feed on vitamins. Animals must be given food rich in mineral salts. And then animals must be given water. So that one makes about what you call the constituency of animal feeds or the balanced diet. So just in brief, let's look at this type of nutrients which animals get from this food. You'll find that we'll have what we call as, let me start with the proteins. Protein feeds. This one include, this one they make animals to grow faster, 2, to high production. So importance of this is, importance of this are 1, for faster growth, and then number 2, for high production. So those are the advantages of or importance of proteins. So examples. When you look at the examples of these animal feeds, we have what we call as animal leguminous feeds. When you talk of animal leguminous feeds here, we have example lucerne, desmodium, clover, and glycine. We have legumes. When I talk of legumes, I have lucerne, desmodium, we have glycine, and then you have clover. Then number 2, we also have what we call dairy meal. We also have what you call as a chick mash. Chick mash. We have cross mash. Cross mash. Then finisher's meal. Finisher's meal. And many others you can name that are under proteins for protein feeds for animals. Let's come to what you call as carbohydrates. What do animals get from carbohydrates, and which are the sources of animal carbohydrate feeds? We go to what you call as carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrate feeds, that is carbohydrate feeds. So, importance. What are the importance of carbohydrates? Of this are: 1, provision of energy. Provision of energy. And then number 2, to provide warmth. Provide warmth. So those are the major example importance of carbohydrates to the animals. Let's look at the examples. Where do animals get this type of nutrients from their feeds? And from which type of feeds are these? Majorly, this one is coming from Napier grass. Napier grass is a very good example. Number 2, we have molasses. Molasses is under concentrates, but still we get it from, we get it into what you call as carbohydrates. We have the maize germ. Although maize germ also may have some protein, but also it contains some carbohydrates. Maize germ and many others, we can get what you call as carbohydrates. Lastly, we have what you call minerals. Minerals for the animals majorly is to protect. Importance is to protect the animal from diseases, and also to make the bone strong. Diseases and making the bones strong. Where do we get these sources? Which are the source? The source of this mineral is, we have what we call the salt lick. Salt lick. Then number 2, it can also come from the grasses and fruits. So those are the examples of minerals for animals. We summarize by looking at what we call vitamins. Vitamins are animal feeds which are got from fruits. And that one is the end of our lesson, done by Vitalis Makanda. We meet in the next episode. Thank you.